Last night's late show with Stephen Colbert descended into absolute chaos when Christine Baranski was physically escorted from the Ed Sullivan Theater after Colbert mocked her theatrical background and suggested she was too sophisticated for regular Americans to relate to. But the 72-year-old actress didn't leave quietly. She delivered a devastating deconstruction of anti-intellectualism that left Colbert's everyman persona in tatters. What started as promotion for Baranski's new Broadway revival would expose something rotten about how late-night television has weaponized ignorance for ratings. But the real story began during the afternoon rehearsal, when Colbert's contempt for theatrical excellence became impossible to hide. The Ed Sullivan Theater had been tense since Baranski arrived for blocking that afternoon. The Emmy-winning actress had immediately noticed something off about the preparation. Her chair had been positioned lower than Colbert's desk, forcing her to look up at him. The lighting had been adjusted to cast shadows on her face, making her appear older and more severe. But what really revealed the show's intentions was what a script supervisor later admitted. Colbert had personally rewritten questions to include terms like elitist, out of touch, and pretentious. He'd instructed his team to bring her down from her high horse. Therefore, Baranski knew she was walking into an ambush designed to humiliate her. But instead of canceling, she decided to expose what late-night comedy had become. The warm-up comedian had been doing an exaggerated impression of snooty theater people, getting uncomfortable laughs from the audience. But Baranski sat backstage, calmly preparing like she was about to perform Lady Macbeth, which in a way, she was. The show opened with Colbert's typical monologue, but it included several jokes about Broadway prices keeping regular people out, and actors who think speaking Shakespeare makes them geniuses. He made cracks about the kind of people who correct your pronunciation at parties while affecting an exaggerated upper-class accent. The audience laughed, but many seemed uncomfortable with the mean-spirited tone. But Colbert appeared energized by the class warfare angle, making increasingly bold jokes about theater people who look down on television and actresses who think they're too good for normal entertainment. Therefore, by the time he announced his first guest, the narrative was already established. Christine Baranski represented everything wrong with elitist art. Ladies and gentlemen, from her ivory tower on Broadway, please welcome Christine Baranski, Colbert announced with obvious sarcasm. The addition of ivory tower to her introduction was deliberately insulting. Baranski walked out with perfect posture, her expression serene but her eyes alert. The audience applauded warmly, many standing for the beloved actress. But when she reached the deliberately lowered chair, she stopped. Without saying a word, she remained standing, forcing Colbert to crane his neck to look up at her. "Christine, aren't you going to sit?" Colbert asked, already thrown off his rhythm. "I think I'll stand. I perform better on my feet." "You understand performance, don't you, Stephen?" she replied calmly. "Of course, but this is just a conversation," he started. "Nothing you do is just anything. Every choice is calculated. The lowered chair, the lighting, even your opening monologue. It's all performance. Bad performance, but performance nonetheless," Baranski observed. Therefore, the confrontation was immediate. Colbert's face flushed. "I think you're being a bit paranoid." "Am I? Then why did your producer ask me to dumb down my vocabulary for your audience? Why was I told to avoid discussing the actual themes of my play because they might be too complex?" she asked. The audience murmured. But Colbert tried to regain control. "Well, Christine, not everyone has your extensive education. Some of us relate to regular people," he said. "Regular people," Baranski repeated slowly. "You mean the people you assume are too stupid to appreciate art? The ones you pander to by mocking intelligence? Those regular people?" she asked. "I don't mock intelligence," Colbert protested. But Baranski pulled out her phone. "Should I play the clip from last week where you called theater-goers pretentious idiots who clap for anything British? Or the one where you said Shakespeare is just old English for people who want to seem smart?" she asked. Therefore, she had come prepared with evidence. Colbert's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. But Baranski wasn't finished. She moved closer to his desk, her presence commanding the entire studio. "You know what's fascinating, Stephen? You went to Northwestern. You studied theater. You performed in plays. But now you mock it all for laughs. Why? What happened to you?" she asked. "I evolved. I found real comedy," he said defensively. "No, you devolved. You found easy laughs. There's a difference between intelligent satire and anti-intellectual pandering. You used to know that difference, Baranski observed. But then she revealed something that changed everything. Your former drama professor at Northwestern, Dr. Patricia Evans, she was my friend. She died last year. Do you know what she said about you? She asked. Colbert went pale. That's not relevant. She said you were her most promising student. That you understood the power of theater to elevate discourse. That you had the potential to be truly great. She died disappointed in what you became, Baranski revealed. The studio was completely silent. But Baranski showed unexpected compassion. You were an artist once, Stephen. You understood that complexity isn't pretension, that intelligence isn't elitism, that excellence isn't exclusion. What happened to that young man? She asked. This is my show, Colbert started angrily. And you're using it to tear down everything you once valued. You're mocking the very foundation of your own education. You're betraying every teacher who believed in you. Baranski interrupted. Therefore, she turned to address the audience directly. This man wants you to believe that aspiring to understand complex art makes you pretentious, that appreciating excellence makes you elitist. He's wrong. You deserve better than dumbed-down content. You deserve to be challenged, elevated, inspired, she told them. Security, Colbert called out suddenly. You're having me removed? For what? Speaking truthfully, Baranski asked incredulously. For disrupting the show, he claimed. But as security approached, Baranski raised her hand. I'll leave. But first, let me tell you something, Stephen. You've become what you once satirized, a man who profits from promoting ignorance. The young theater student who loved art would be ashamed of you, she said. Get her out, Colbert said, his voice shaking with anger. Therefore, as security moved to escort her, Baranski delivered her final blow. You know what the saddest part is? You're actually smart enough to know what you've become. Every night, you go home knowing you've betrayed everything you once stood for. That's not comedy. That's tragedy, she said. The audience began booing, but not at Baranski. They were booing Colbert and the security guards. Several people stood up and walked out in solidarity. But Baranski maintained her dignity even while being escorted out. To everyone watching, she called out, don't let anyone make you feel ashamed for seeking excellence. Don't let anyone mock you for appreciating art. Intelligence isn't elitism. Ignorance isn't authenticity. Remember that, she said. As she was led away, she turned back one final time. Oh, and Stephen, your Shakespeare pronunciation in that sketch last month? Completely wrong. If you're going to mock something, at least learn it first, she said. The theatrical exit was perfect, but the show fell apart immediately. Colbert tried to continue, but the remaining audience was hostile. His jokes fell flat. His confidence was shattered. Within minutes, #BaranskiSpeaksTruth was trending worldwide. But the response went deeper than typical viral moments. Theater communities erupted in support. Academics praised her defense of intelligence. The conversation about anti-intellectualism in media exploded. But the most damaging response came from Northwestern University. The drama department released a statement distancing themselves from Colbert. His former professors expressed disappointment. The very institution that had educated him rejected what he'd become. CBS was forced to respond immediately, but the damage was catastrophic. Sponsors focusing on educated demographics withdrew. The show faced accusations of promoting anti-intellectualism. The very foundation of Colbert's credibility was destroyed. Colbert attempted damage control the next night. I respect all forms of artistic expression, he said weakly. But the audience was noticeably smaller, less enthusiastic. Many seats remained empty. Meanwhile, Baranski's Broadway show sold out for 6 months solid. Audiences flocked to support her, to prove that excellence still mattered. She became a symbol of resistance against the dumbing down of culture. But the deeper impact was on late-night television itself. Other hosts began examining their own content. The easy jokes about intelligence became harder to justify. The mockery of expertise became less acceptable. Baranski released a thoughtful statement. I didn't go on Colbert's show to create conflict. But when confronted with someone mocking the very education that enabled his success, silence would have been complicity. We must defend excellence, especially when it's unfashionable to do so, she said. Therefore, the incident became known as the Baranski Principle, the idea that intelligence must be defended against those who profit from mocking it. Universities taught it in media studies. It became a watershed moment in the culture wars. Years later, Colbert would admit the encounter haunted him. She was right. I'd become the thing I'd once fought against. Someone who made people feel stupid for being smart, he confessed. But that night, all anyone saw was Christine Baranski being forcibly removed for the crime of defending intelligence. She'd been kicked off the show, but she'd kicked down something bigger, the wall of acceptable anti-intellectualism that late-night comedy had hidden behind. The security footage of her being escorted out became iconic, not as a moment of shame, but as a moment of principle. A woman maintaining perfect dignity while being removed for refusing to let excellence be mocked. And Stephen Colbert, who'd built his career on intelligent satire, had been exposed as someone who'd abandoned intelligence for easy laughs. He'd traded his artistic soul for ratings, and Baranski had held up the receipt. The empty chair she was forced to leave represented every artist mocked for excellence, every intellectual dismissed as elitist, every person who'd been made to feel that aspiring to understand complex art was somehow shameful. At 72, Christine Baranski had been physically removed from a television show. But she'd removed something more important, the mask that hid late-night television's contempt for the very intelligence it once celebrated. She'd exposed how even the smartest hosts could choose to promote stupidity if it paid well enough. The woman who'd mastered Shakespeare had given Colbert a tragedy he'd never forget, the story of a promising artist who betrayed his gifts for applause, only to have his former self exposed by someone who'd never betrayed hers.